Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about addressing CEO leadership weaknesses and potentially doing those with the CEO coach. And just to kick it off, leadership is not coming in last. It's not being the nicest guy in the room. It's not being lenient at work. Although those are often the articles and videos we see online. This person was a great leader because they did this, that, and the other. Usually that's just weakness. I'm just being honest about that. So that's not leadership, okay? Leadership has specific qualities. There's been so many books written about it. We're going to talk a little bit about John Maxwell's style of leadership, but there's a lot that we can learn from other authors and past experiences, but I'm going to go through my list, how I would work with you as a CEO, how I would work on leadership, how leadership is something that you learn over time. You're not necessarily born with leadership, and it's okay to understand that and realize you're going to get better. There's specific frameworks you can use. But to kick it off, we're going to first, you got to recognize your weaknesses. It could be, maybe you're not a great listener. That's probably very common among most CEOs. As someone's talking to you, you can't wait for them to stop because your mind's working, 3 times faster, and you just want to get to the end of it. Maybe you're not leading by example how you should. Maybe you're not showing appreciation, which is a super powerful way to foster leadership. And also, think about what leadership is. What are the results that you want out of leadership? We're going to go through those in this list, but one of them is that as being the leader of your company, others are going to look up to you and hopefully follow some of your traits. Or do you dive into things deep and really get to the root cause and find the answer? Your team's going to do the same thing. Do you get easily irritated? If you do that, your team might do that as well, or they might be afraid to tell you problems when they come up. So there's a lot of things to consider here. First, when you think about it, where does it all start? It starts with your communication skills. So think about how you communicate to the team. There's a lot of areas where when I think back to my early years where I could have improved. I think early on I was too nice, right? I was afraid to kind of maybe have confrontation at work. And I didn't know the right way to do it. But there is a right way to do it. If you're clear, if there are challenges going on at work and you're clear about those and you go to that report, and you do that in a professional way, not only is it a better way to do it, but your report will respect you more. The problem will come up less in the future. It's going to be better for everybody. So what seems like a tough discussion ends up being better for everybody, and including their personal growth as well. Another thing that I actually ended up thinking later on, kind of maybe year 15 to 20 of running NewAir, was making sure everybody understood the why. Think about what this means, okay? You have a vision. And of course, hopefully you've got that vision on paper and the company sees your vision, but you have a vision and you have reasons why you're doing certain things. If you don't clearly explain why to your team, they're not going to get the full context. Hey, we need to do this. These are the steps that we need to do X, Y, and Z. But when they understand why you want them to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to gain a completely new context into the reason why you're setting up those goals or those changes within the work environment. And they will bring you new changes because they're going to say, oh, okay, I understand why you want to do this. Did you consider this? Did you consider that? So the why is extremely important. I'm a strong believer in that as one of the most important ways to foster good leadership, but also just to improve your company culture. Okay, because then your team really, feel closer to you because they understand how you're thinking, why you want to do something. They kind of feel more on the team. Delegate, but don't abdicate. Okay, this is another, false claim. Don't be a micromanager. Don't do this. Listen, you have to know if you're the CEO, then, you're responsible for execution. Okay, you have to know the details of your company. So you can't just delegate and be a nice boss and don't micromanage. Of course, micromanage is a term it's not a good term, and it's not something that anybody wants to be called a micromanager, but you cannot abdicate responsibility. You have to know the details of maybe a process that's put in if it's going to have, especially if it touches the customer in any way. That's your responsibility as the CEO. Set clear expectations. So again, everything in writing. Early on, it's fire drill after fire drill. Things are not in writing. Employee goals maybe aren't even written down like they should be, right? And job requirements and all those types of things. It's just like, hey, something new comes up, guess what? You're doing this today as well. And that's normal. It's totally normal, and it's nothing to worry about. But as you professionalize the company, setting clear expectations, not only does it make your company run better, but it's much more fair to your team. Okay, you're gonna have less turnover, you're gonna have less uncertainty, less gossip behind the scenes, because it's very clear on what you're doing. Everything is written down. The team knows why they have to do things, what they don't have to do. These are, obvious things, in big companies, right? Everything is written down, and there's probably too many processes at that point. So there's kind of that balance, right? You still want to be, MVP, minimum viable product. You want to move quick. You want to break things, but you want things to ship on time and have great customer service. So there's that balance, and you don't want to kind of kill the morale. But setting clear expectations. We could do an hour-long video on that one and why that's important. But to me, that's a huge lever on the leadership side. And then next, you go to goal planning and alignment. Again, large companies, they have their budgets, they have their forecasts, there's tons of goal planning. Where does that start with the company, right? As you're growing, you get 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 employees. At some point, you're building that muscle of fiscal planning, setting expectations, of getting alignment. And really, what does alignment mean? Everybody's moving the same direction. That's what it means. That's what you've all heard a million times, I'm sure. But what's sort of misunderstood, not really misunderstood, but what's equally important, but is not talked about as much, and that is how much that improves morale and culture. Okay, so when you have clear alignment, when everybody's going the same direction, and it's a team, and you go to your lunches and you're talking about the same things, and you go to your parties and events and at work and up on the wall, people feel good about coming to work. They know what's expected of them. You have to keep in mind, this is a big thing, as a founder, CEO especially, okay? You're used to uncertainty, okay? You got up and just literally created something out of nothing. People don't realize how difficult that is. None of your friends can empathize with you. None of them really understand what you did, but you created something out of nothing, okay? Your team doesn't think the same way. They think a different way, which is fine, but they don't like uncertainty. You might thrive in uncertainty, okay? I definitely did, and created plenty of chaos, but your team hates it. And that's something to understand, and why it really narrow it right back down to alignment. That's why alignment is so critical, and something that is worth thinking about every single month at your meetings, and making sure that message is clear. The next is a growth mindset. Now, most entrepreneurs, most founders do have a growth mindset, but some of them can be negative too often, can kind of pick at the negatives instead of also looking at the glass half full. I'm a big believer in glass half full. Most of the books I like to read, I really think that what you think, what you put into your mind. So it's really important to me. And I think it makes a big effect on your team to be positive. And I think that's a great way to encourage a certain behavior that you want, and also to get the team behind you if you have a certain vision and you're positive about it. And when you find your team doing good things, you compliment them on those achievements that they've made. I think that's absolutely a good sign of a leader. You're not being weak there. You have a goal in mind, and you're getting your team there by focusing on those wins. And when your team feels that, they're going to be much more likely to continue moving and pushing through the struggles to get there for you. Another one is direct written feedback. Okay, so how many times, especially for younger CEOs, have you been nervous about having to let someone go? Of course, it's a very difficult decision, but even nervous about writing somebody up. Right? If somebody, if something needs to be improved at work and you don't write up a low performer, you're going to lose your high performers. And I know everybody has heard this, but how hard is it to do that for a new or younger CEO? It's difficult, right? You want to be giving good news, not bad news, right? So, but you can give this direct written feedback to good employees in a positive way that's not critical, but you do it in a way where it's really clear you're having a direct conversation, but it's a positive conversation. There's respect on both sides. And actually your counterpart or your report is going to really appreciate this, because instead of building resentment and they keep doing things the wrong way and you're not really sure how to tell them, or whatever the situation might be, you're being clear on it. And that clarity to them, while it might sting, or it may or may not sting, but what's going to happen is they're going to respect that you took the time to tell them that in a respectful way and move the relationship forward. And I've seen this many times I've actually seen it improve employee relationships many, many times over the years. And it's definitely an underestimated thing in small companies. Of course, once larger companies and you have a great HR in place, hopefully those things are happening. But kind of as you're scaling up, this is an area, a low-hanging fruit that you can definitely strengthen your team by doing. Thinking about John Maxwell's teachings. He's a great author, written many, many books. A lot of them are kind of on the same principles. I don't think you need to read all of them, but it's worth referencing some of his writing. Leadership is measured by influence, not title. Okay, that was a really great teaching of John Maxwell. So think about what that means, As a leader, you need to get the team behind you. Okay, if you only get half the team behind you, you're not going to get to the goal as fast as your competitors are. So it's really about influence. It's not about title. I think that adds some humility as well. And I think humility, by the way, is a key attribute of leadership.